That was for that. Hey, friends. What's happening?
Thanks, Dad.
Hey, guys. The Deconstruction Zone. We got some more people in here today.
What up? That's
Ow.
Thank you for that.
That was
Yeah.
loud.
Hey, how's it going?
You good?
Yeah.
It's going all right. So the Sadie, we've teased this a little bit, right? The
Yeah.
idea that the Deconstruction that was shifting, and what it's going to look like is a bigger team. And
Is that a fat joke?
Is that
I
what is
go to
that
the
supposed
gym,
to mean,
Danny.
bro?
it is in fact a fat joke. Thank you. It's not a fat joke.
We
but
do CrossFit together.
We're getting the darkness out of Danny early. I like it.
So we're going to be
Gross.
doing a body positivity episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Starting
welcome
out.
to our
I
podcast.
need it.
Can you guys introduce yourself? I mean, I'm going to suspect most people know us, Sadie. People met you last week, but will you
Yeah.
guys just reintroduce yourself in case maybe someone has not listened to the Deconstruction and not met you guys before?
I'm cooler than you. So I'm Kyle. JT and I, back in January, launched our own podcast where we've actually gotten to speak with Danny a couple of times. This is my first time on the pod with Sadie, so super pumped.
What?
We've only had Danny on because Kyle said women shouldn't be on podcasts.
I
And
hate
so,
it here. Can I get out?
Nope.
Is it?
Nope.
Oh,
You're
okay,
stuck.
Cool. Okay, cool. So I'm Kyle. JT and I both work at Concord Trinity UMC in South County.
What?
I am the director of family ministries here. I actually, on the date of recording this, tomorrow is my 1-year anniversary. So we've survived a
Aw.
year. I know, isn't that cute?
That is
So cute.
exciting.
So I've been.
It only gets worse from here, buddy.
I think that's
So-
what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been a Methodist in general for a year. So I've had a year of really interesting theology shifts, and I'm sure we'll talk more about like,
Baptist
our-
to Methodist, right?
Yes. Yeah. So like it's like the Star Wars like originals now, but like
They
you
ripped
know-
off your story.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I was like in the sequels like before that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Not good. You know?
And shout out to yourself, first day back from paternity leave.
It is, yeah. First day back from paternity leave. My wife and I had our baby boy back in May. He is the best.
Snaps.
Danny, in one of their previous episodes, talked about like interviewing their kids. So I said we're just gonna bring Hudson in, like when he's like crying and like ready to eat, and then we're just gonna have that for an episode.
Yeah.
The content people want.
Could be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Patreon's gonna be exclusive.
Right. It's like those videos. Hey, will you watch my kid for a little bit? You just walk away.
Yeah.
Or just
Yeah.
put a microphone in
Yep.
front of him and walk away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And so JT, you were recently on, so you don't need to go like crazy into it, but like
Yeah.
reintroduce yourself in case someone. That wasn't like a don't talk long.
We don't care about who.
But people
you
probably-
are.
You've
At the
had
time-
one episode of JT, and personally, that was enough.
You were just on the last episode.
I was on the last episode. Yes, I am here at Concord Trinity. I'm the director of discipleship and missions, and it is great to be here. I was not gone for an entire month like Kyle, but I was just gone in Washington D.C. with
Yeah.
our youth group, taking them there to learn about justice advocacy and stuff. I had to take them because Kyle said he doesn't believe in justice advocacy, so I had to take him. I had to take the kids and teach them about that. So. I am
Are you
glad
guys
to
sure
be
you
back
want to do
in
this?
St.
You guys
Louis.
can back out now. Like it's okay to kick us out.
Excuse me, I'm trying to introduce myself.
Oh, okay,
And so happy to be here. Happy to be in the zone.
It'll be
The
great to watch
zone.
this back because you will see. It's already happened a few times. Sadie and I make awkward eye contact when you guys make roasts to each other. And so
Yeah.
it's very, very funny.
You guys love it.
Don't worry, we're going to share the roast a little bit. We will.
Oh,
But
good.
so the Deconstruction Zone and the Progressive Pastor podcast, we're becoming one team.
Maybe not that.
We're joining forces. It's like interstellar domination.
Yeah, and we all got dinner a couple weeks ago, and we were just kind of visioning it out. And like JT and I have been waiting to see, like how we were going to learn and grow, and how we could continue to push this up. And honestly, like half of our guests were you, so
That's true, actually. Yeah.
it was because people would have to change days. We're like, what idiot can we pull in that
Yeah.
lives like 5 minutes away? And
This
Dave's like,
idiot.
Dude's like, I'll come
Yeah.
up. Yeah, so
Right there.
But yeah.
I'm everyone's backup podcast guest.
But yeah, and then Danny being the mastermind he is, wooed us in, and
Wooed
it
us
worked.
in?
He wooed us.
He did.
The
He wooed
mastermind.
us. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
So-
think just the conversations that we were having naturally, we thought would maybe lend toward a bigger audience. It's like maybe
Yeah.
people are having the similar questions or tension in life and in faith, and I think that will be represented. So
Yeah, and we cover a pretty like wide swath of belief, like upbringing, traditions, like even where we like studied undergrad, all that. Like we've all done different work.
What?
It's like we're across the board, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah. There's a
Yeah.
better and a worse. Can you stop moving? Your chair is like, stop.
Yeah,
Stop. It's
you can hear the squeaks on the Patreon, but I heard.
There is. Yeah, we have
Here
the,
we go.
the squeak mic.
So JT, you got an icebreaker for us, I hear.
I got an icebreaker. Okay, so I'm going to do...
And with that,
As a preface, I feel so bad for you guys, but continue on.
Okay, we're going to do this icebreaker, and I'm sure you guys have icebreakers as well, but
I don't have
also
to
want
participate,
us
right?
to workshop
Yeah.
me and Danny's TikTok account idea. We need to workshop that here, so don't let us forget about that. Okay, we're going to do this
cool.
first.
Sweet.
Okay.
So we're going to do a little game. I don't want to say it. We're going to do a little game of either or here.
yeah.
Okay?
Am I playing or is it just them two?
We'll just do them two.
I don't want to play.
We'll just do... Actually, no, you're going to play.
Yeah,
We're just going to do them. We're going to be either or. We did this with one of our guests, but that episode is not released on the PPP.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
By the time this goes out,
It
it
may-
might
it
be
may
out
be
there,
or may
but
not be, yeah.
Sadie and Danny have not. Okay, so just whatever comes to mind first. Yeah, just
Yeah.
friendly,
Okay.
nice. There's 10
Yeah.
items.
Yeah.
Okay, to
Super
either or.
easy game.
All right, you ready? Shall we?
Let's
Just
do it.
rapid fire. Pizza or tacos?
Tacos for me.
Pizza.
Pizza.
Pizza. Good. Rap or punk?
Punk.
Rap.
Good.
Rap.
Yeah, good. Okay. Universal healthcare or universal basic income?
Universal healthcare.
God, I knew it was
A
coming.
universal basic income.
Yeah. What?
I knew it was coming.
Stall more.
Healthcare.
Books or movies?
Movies.
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 Oh. Okay.
We didn't all go to Princeton, JT.
Yeah. Oh.
Get the diploma. Get the
Get
diploma.
to the yeah. Camera
Bring it
guys,
out, bring it
pan
out.
up, pan up. 9-woman Supreme Court or total elimination of nuclear weapons?
9-1 Supreme Court.
9 women on the Supreme Court.
Nuclear weapons.
Oh,
Wow.
chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Chocolate.
Vanilla.
Makes sense.
That makes sense. 100% eco-friendly vehicles or 100% free public transit?
Public transit.
Yeah, public
Yeah,
transit.
living in Portland, public transit was dope.
Yeah.
Everyone should have free, amazing public transit.
Yep, love that answer actually. Beach or mountains?
Beach.
Mountains.
Beach.
Mountains.
Hate
My job
the
is beach.
My job is
My job is beach.
my job is not. I hate the beach.
I will beat you off right now.
I'll
Okay,
beat
five
you off right now.
at Five Below today. I was there and
Ooh.
they referenced beach off. It was like for your next beach off.
That is the best form
Yeah.
of writing I've ever seen in any
I
love that.
media.
It was
really
actually
good.
great, yeah. Free food or free
Thank
housing?
you.
Say that again.
Free food or free housing?
Food.
Hot take.
I was gonna housing. I think.
Okay.
Housing.
Housing? Yeah, that makes sense.
You can die
Blown-
from hunger.
Blown one out. All right.
Camping is cool.
Last questions.
Camping.
Not in Ohio.
It's also
not-
illegal now. Yeah. So
Less corrupt politicians or less corrupt politicians?
politicians.
Politicians.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
less
a-
corrupt politicians.
Yeah.
Speaking
of, you said this last presidential
Stop.
debate was so good.
Stop, dude.
Yeah.
I saw on Facebook or something. One of my friends said, "What? Can you imagine what it would have been like trying to be like the sign language interpreter for that debate?
Oh.
Just hands in the air. Like,
Just
quit.
just a shrug, like
Just
a
quit.
2-hour shrug. Just
yeah.
Okay, that was fun. Yeah, I feel like that was insightful for us. Now, so Danny and I have this TikTok idea. Danny and I, in case you can't tell, both do CrossFit. You know how do you know how to tell if somebody does CrossFit?
No.
They talk
They'll
about
tell
it
they'll tell you
incessantly.
about it. They'll
Yep.
tell you
Yeah.
about it.
Mm.
And so we have this idea of documenting our CrossFit journeys on a TikTok account.
Yeah.
But we're kind of struggling with, like, we have a few names. We said if Kyle or Sadie were to come and do it with us, we could be the Swoley Trinity.
It's a really good name. Is the problem.
I can't afford.
That's what I said. They make
CrossFit.
billions of dollars.
Yeah.
You have more income, less bills than I do, and less kids.
I don't know what you're talking
So
about.
shut up. So what were some of our other ones that we threw out?
Swoley Ghostin.
Swoley Ghost,
Swoley
yeah.
Ghost is
Swoley
pretty
Ghost,
good.
yeah. I had a all cross no fit.
Yeah. I like
That-
You
that
had
one.
cross
good.
fat.
Cross fat was my
Yeah, that
favorite.
was good. I like that one.
Cross Fat's way. Remember the movie Fat Camp? Like
Yeah.
that was such a good movie.
Yeah.
Like heavyweights?
10. Oh, heavyweights. That's what
Yeah,
it was.
heavyweights.
Yeah.
You know that
I knew what
camp-
you were talking
Do you know
about.
that camp
Yeah.
exists? It's like, so I worked at a summer camp all through college, and
Were-
we played that camp in intramural sports, like staff sports. And
Were-
it's a real fat
What?
camp.
Were you Ben Stiller?
I was not, but I'll tell you that the staff,
You were the one.
the staff of that camp was like just demolishing McDonald's outside the doors of the camp
Goodness.
because they can't have
Oh.
unhealthy food in it, and they were just outside the walls, just like hammering Big Macs. Like
Wow.
it was their
And
job.
if that's
Respect.
not church,
Well, it wasn't a religious camp, but
Wow.
but it's a metaphor.
it is a metaphor.
We love a metaphor.
Yeah.
It's a metaphor. What else? Ripped Revs,
Ripped Revs,
Oh,
Pumped
that-
Pastures.
Pumped Pastures.
Those both
yeah.
suck. Dish
I
those.
did use ChatGPT to come up with a few of these.
Mm.
I can
I'll
tell
tell
you.
That's good.
that
Yeah.
ChatGPT does
Yeah.
not have great creativity. Though I think it would be a great podcast segment to like ask theological questions at ChatGPT and see if
That
it has
could
better
be-
responses than we
Ooh.
do.
That could be
pin
the
in
week
that,
4.
actually.
Like, it could
Yeah,
be-
I like
we
that.
can swap that in.
I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
But long story short, we made a goal
Yeah, we did.
that we're going to try to do this, achieve some personal goals. If we make it, we're going to go watch the CrossFit games.
We are. We're
And
gonna
so
road
we
trip
want to
out.
document our
Ooh.
journey in
Nice.
person.
What are
Not
the
like
CrossFit
we're not going to go to
games?
like someone's house and watch it on TV. It's like
Pay-per-view, yeah.
Yeah.
think about like the Olympics, but a much smaller version of people that are not Olympic athletes.
But
That's
they
a good way
have
to
the
describe it.
egos
Okay.
of Olympic athletes.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
they think they should all be at the Olympics.
Well-
And like there's certain ones. There's a female athlete, Tia Claire Toomey,
Yeah.
is an Olympic powerlifter and
Yeah.
a like 4-time CrossFit athlete.
7-time, I think.
Yeah,
Actually.
she's
Yeah.
crushing it.
Crazy.
Cool.
Well, everyone needs
she
their
would-
thing.
So if you're here to
Destroy you.
talk about deconstruction, you found the right podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Clearly. Oh, man.
I have so much to
anyway.
add about CrossFit.
Enlighten
The
us.
Swoley
no,
Trinity.
no, that's
Oh, okay.
no, I don't.
That's it?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
cool.
it.
End of the segment. Cool.
So though for this episode,
yeah.
my thought was, and we can go anywhere on this, but
We have already.
Challenge
so,
accepted.
yeah.
my hope was because we're kind of getting a chance to like know everyone and for the audience to know us, like I think the best way to do that is stripping away all barriers and throwing out really intensely inflammatory theological questions
I love
Oh,
that.
jeez.
as ways to try to get to find where we are and what we think about things. And they don't have to be inflammatory, but I thought maybe I said this in our group text, which is this group text gives me more anxiety than any group text. I mean, you guys are so mean to each other, and I have to pretend to be mean.
Hey,
We love each other
I have
so
to pretend
much.
to be. Yeah, that's true. I've never. Danny is.
I don't know
very
about that. I
optimistic.
don't know about pretend.
It's not us being mean. It's Danny and JT significantly showing their age, and Sadie and I have to call them to the floor.
Yeah, we do.
How old
Yeah.
are you?
I'm 27.
I'm
Okay,
also 27.
I'm 31. I'm only 4 years older.
Yeah, that 3 in the front though.
Is that it?
Icky. It gives me the ick.
It does
Yeah.
it give the ick?
It gives the ick.
Danny's in his 50s.
It's giving ick.
It's
Is that
giving
what the
ick.
kids say?
No.
This does
Um,
not slay.
So in this group chat, I said,
Okay.
"Come with a question." Did anyone come with a question?
You didn't
Yes.
specify
You
theological
did not
Yeah.
question,
specify
so I have a
theological,
question.
Actually.
Great. Yeah.
It's
throw a
not
question.
theological.
Great. I love it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, am I? You don't want to start with me.
Do you have one? You.
I don't have one that's hyper inflammatory, but I
I
wanted
prefer
to.
we can
hyper
start-
inflammatory, actually.
Here's how we go though. It's like Danny never asks questions, so this is our opportunity to team up against him.
Yeah.
No, he never answers
Answers
questions.
Okay. Oh, that's true.
He
Yeah.
never answers.
I ask a lot of questions. What do you guys think about? This isn't that inflammatory, but what do you guys think about free will versus predestination? What do you guys think about it?
Wow.
Ooh, I believe in the illusion of free will.
Say more.
Ooh.
It's not really like a theological backing that I have for it. It's more just my own noggin. But I just feel like I believe that I make choices, but I don't think I would make, like, I think that the choices that I make are because of my brain chemistry and the exact way that I was raised and because of other people's brain chemistry. It's like for the most part, I couldn't really change that. And that's made me into myself, but it's kind of like the illusion of self. I don't know. But I'm content. I kind of believe that, but I'm content with free will being an illusion because I believe that I make decisions, so I do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
Man, I didn't come prepared for this episode. Danny's like,
We're all looking at you, so.
this is cool. I feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so you said brain chemistry, and that just brings me back to like conversations I've had with like about mental health, like in the church, and
Right.
not a talked about topic at all. Needs to be talked about more. But like I grew up in a space where, because there were so many questions about it, people were like, well, being depressed is a sin. Like, and you're a bad person if you're depressed. And like, you just need to love Jesus more if you're depressed, and like pray about it harder. And like, that means that the emergency sweatshirt is coming out, folks.
It's coming, yeah.
But my depression and my anxiety that I live with every day is because of my brain chemistry that God designed and gave me, and I truly believe that. So like, that plays a part into my free will, like what you were kind of alluding to. But yeah, I'm wrapping my head around that. This got really deep really fast. I
like
prepared
that.
for it.
Those are interesting responses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we're gonna get Daniel first.
Daniel. Yeah.
I think it's like I've always thought it's very funny that people debate this, because I think it's like there's no real answer to it.
Yeah.
But growing up in my Christian tradition, it was the hot button topic. Like, it wasn't LGBTQ inclusion. It wasn't like women in ministry. It was, do we have free will or not? And we were like a pretty evangelical church, or like
was this in Portland?
Portland, yeah. Like, were we predestined? Was actually like the question.
Right,
like,
yeah.
Was our life preordained, predestined? My general thought is, like, God knows everything that's going to happen, but that doesn't mean that we don't have the ability to make free choices. So I think where we oftentimes get into this like impossible situation is like God knowing something means it couldn't be a free choice. I think God knows everything that will happen, past, present, and future. I would also say that we have free agency to make the choices, and that isn't like God playing chess or us like having predetermined lives.
So the answer is yes and no, is what you just said.
So I was going to answer it really clearly. I would say no, I don't believe in predestination, but I do think God knows everything that will happen and has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess I think my answer, like, because I don't believe in hell and I'm a universalist, I don't need to know if you choose whether or not to be saved by God, or if God created some people to go to heaven and God created some people and knew that they would go to hell. So the question has different implications for me.
Yeah, and I would say ultimately that's actually what people are asking, is like,
They are.
It's implications to like afterlife, because people are like, do I have the free will to pick this phone up? That's what they try to disguise it as.
Right.
But
Yeah.
really, is it like a loving God choose to send a subset of creation to hell or heaven without like their agency to have choices in that? And that's
Right.
so I think it actually does have more eternal implications, but we usually package it in like life choices.
Well, and to me, this is one of those topics of conversation that, like, is so deeply rooted in theological conversations. But at the same time, I think that we try to, overthink God in so many ways. And like, this is like the whole point of like your relationship with Jesus, and or what is faith, and so to me, like, these conversations, like, it just seems so empty at the same time too, because like, I don't know, like, how am I supposed to know? Like, I don't. Yes, it's good to have these kind of like topics of conversation, and like this is the whole point of the podcast. So I feel like I'm just trying to like discredit what we're doing here, but like I hate when people get so like strung up on it too, like because at the end of the day, like, we're all just gonna shrug our shoulders and say we don't really know what the answer is. And I hate like pastors and theologians that are like, oh, this is 100% what it is, and like, you're wrong in so many ways. But
Yeah, I said that about heaven and hell the other week in a sermon. I was like, well, I've never been there, so
That's
this is all
true.
speculation,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's like, but we talk in this like, well, I know, and it's like, it's theological work is speculation.
yeah, like, you want to have a stance in what you
Ooh.
believe, and you want to like
Embroider
stand
that on a
ground in
pillow.
that. Embroidered on a pillow.
Yeah.
That's okay, Grandma.
Saying it's a good quote.
Yeah, like, you want to like
To
have
see that on the couch.
you want to have a stance in what you believe, but like, at the same time too, like, you need to have room for adaptation, which is the whole purpose of the deconstruction zone, in my opinion. So
What do they teach you at Princeton about predestination?
Well,
come on, dork, bring it in.
I'll give 3 answers to this. I'm not gonna say
Naturally.
that.
Take your time.
I'm not going to
Biblical.
say that one is the right one, or because I hold all of these in tension. So, thinking about, I have a hard time affirming a strict deterministic version of predestination as like this, everything that happens, every movement, every step, every action is, determined and predestined for me. I have a hard time doing that because of the problem of suffering. So the idea that like God preordained this world to be as it is, and it includes the Holocaust, and yet we still affirm that this is a good, perfectly loving God, I have a problem with that. So on that side of this debate, I struggle. On the other side, thinking about this, I was listening to a podcast, like a science podcast about like the multiverse and some of this stuff, and a lot of it over my head, but this general idea that like an infinite number of iterations of the universe happening at any given time that accommodate every possible difference, right? Mm-hmm. So in a way, whatever happens in this multiverse is just what was going to happen. What?
I think you just watched Spider-Man.
No, I guess. I mean,
Spider-Verse?
whatever happens in this universe is just what was going to happen by the dice roll, right? So like, there is a deterministic idea in that. If we want to think about it just from like a scientific perspective,
yeah.
Right? So then again, like free will is like a theological question. This is like a scientific explanation to that. But I will say, so I studied in undergrad and in seminary, I studied Karl Barth, the Swiss theologian who was really, really, really important in the 20th century and was very well known for his doctrine of election. And he was a Reformed theologian, bought into Calvin on predestination, but had a few caveats. One of them being that like everybody, or he nods toward this in his work, that everybody is predestined to get in. At the end of the day, one person is predestined to hell, and that's Jesus. But because he's the Son of God, he has a way out, right? So like he has this kind of theological formula. But also in his work on prayer, he talks about like God does determine what is happening, what will happen through all time, but God determines it in the way God carves history around the path of our prayer. So God knows what we're praying for, and God carves the path of history around those things the way that like a river runs around the rocks, right? So I find all of those to be relatively compelling answers to this question. I don't know that there's one I buy into more than the other. This is kind of a question I don't really give a shit about, honestly.
Yeah.
But I find those to be compelling answers to this question at this point in my life. You were like chomping to say something. Yeah.
I was literally chomping. But when you were talking about the multiverse,
Yeah.
it kind of reminded me of like, because we believe that God is transcendent, we also believe that God is transcendent of time. Mm-hmm. So the idea of predestination versus free will, it kind of implies an assumption that we view time linearly.
Yeah.
So it's like this thing happened first, this thing happened second. We found a meaning after, that's great, but maybe we're not seeing the full picture here. If God is transcendent and outside of time, but also you would figure that God would know that we would still perceive time linearly, so maybe he would like throw us a bone or something. But yeah.
Well, this is also like all of this conversation assumes that whatever God is, it's a kind of God that knows the way that we know and thinks the way that we think,
right,
and like perceives the way we perceive, versus something totally, like you use the word other, like something totally other that we can't even comprehend outside of like the biblical canon.
Yeah, we try to
of
humanize
Jesus.
God so often.
Yeah, and like we, like.
And I think that God created our brain chemistry in that way.
Yeah.
Like we're not supposed to be able to comprehend heaven or hell or God, or any of that. Like there's like the idea of eternity like is supposed to like make your brain explode. Like you can't comprehend that.
And for me it did at age 7, and I was having the panic attacks.
Oh, The panic
Yep.
attacks.
Yeah.
Emphasis on
Those.
Attacks.
Wow.
Sorry.
That was
Yeah.
fun. But yeah, like I think it's fine that we don't understand those
Yeah.
things. Like, I don't see anything wrong with that. I think we're designed to be that way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's interesting, right? Like a lot of theology. I was just arguing with someone in the TikTok comments about this
Doesn't
back
sound
and
like
forth.
you. Doesn't sound like you, buddy.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like me. And I was trying really hard to convince him and get him to understand that, like, theology in general, like, is done extra biblically. It's like it's not done in the book, really. Like the Trinity, not explicitly named, right? Like many of the things that we believe, heaven and hell, like our constructs for those, predestination, like, and there's things like that allude to certain ideas, but it is very much us trying to reconcile our understanding of God. And like, if you remember when Rob Bell wrote Love Wins, Francis Chan wrote like what he would not call a rebuttal, but it was called Erasing Hell. And it was a fine book. I didn't agree with a lot of the conclusions, but one of the things he did say in it was like, in this conversation, we're trying to give our view of like justice and time and eternity to God. And it's like, we're saying we're as smart as God, our morals are God's. Like, and that's what I would agree with, like, and kind of what you guys are saying. Like, we're putting humanistic reasoning, logic, and theology into something that is other. Like, God is not human. Now, we're made in God's image, but God is not made in our image. And like, I think we make our theology the other way around oftentimes.
I liked that.
Yeah.
That was
Put it on a pillow.
Pop
Put it
on
on
the
a pillow.
queen.
Well, and it's also like, yes, all of that is true. And there is, when we think about like the history of theology, it is so often intertwined with the philosophy of the day of whoever was writing and all these things. At the same time, like, that was Bart's big contention, was like, we have to get back to like a central focus. We have to get away from all this philosophy, and like, if we're going to take one starting point from all of this, it's got to be the person of Jesus. Like, if we need to think about what our faith says about free will or politics or whatever, we have to start with Jesus and then extrapolate out from there. Because if we don't have like, a solid center point, like a solid middle, then we could start with whatever and with whoever, and we could very easily like wander away from whatever we might call essentially Christian, like what Bart and others referred to as like the charisma of Christianity, of like this centralized nugget, and we could start doing theology with, like what some of our MAGA friends are doing, and like doing theology of
You
Trump.
do have a lot of those friends. Yeah.
That's really nice. That's really nice, Kyle. Excuse me for okay.
Regardless of your political party, we love you and we want you to engage in this podcast.
Yes.
Anyway, keep going.
Anyway.
You had a good
What
point.
do we think about the essential nature of Jesus' death?
Oh, that's a great
Oh,
question.
yeah, that is a great one. Danny and I disagree.
Oh,
Kick us off.
Here we go.
JT and I have done this on the podcast. And it was
Have we done that? Have we talked about this?
very briefly. I got very stressed out, so I didn't give much of an answer.
Oh, okay. Did I give an answer?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jesus.
That's
Okay.
what stressed me out. Continue.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think let's make Danny answer first.
Oh, here we go.
Daniel,
I like
care to
it.
explain?
Like the flow of this pod.
We did talk about this on a podcast.
We did.
Do we
Can
need
you
to
shut up and let Danny answer? Thank you. Daniel?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know that we disagree. I mean, I think it is a core tenet of Christianity, and the idea of Jesus' death happening on the cross. I think it's less interest. Like, if we're going into this time-space continuum, multiverse, it happened, and it played a part. Therefore, it is essential because we cannot go back and do anything about it. And it goes into our understanding of time, space, the way God lays things out. I think what Jesus did is essential to the story that is being written since. I think where I would not go to, which it can lump me into this, is like, there's a loving God that said the only way to reconcile creation to me is to kill this son of mine or this innocent person. Like, I think the murder theology is not where I'm at. But I do think it's essential in the sense that, like, in the story of history, like, Jesus was a historical figure. Jesus died on a cross. Like, there's these things that we know to be true, and there's lots of myth that was maybe created around it. But, like, I believe in the essentialness of Jesus. And when Jesus says things like, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, and there are these really like narrow statements. Like I perceive them to be true, but I also would believe that the narrow path that Jesus was talking about was far different than the one that like conservative evangelicals preach. I think
Yes.
Word.
So
That was different than I thought we were going to
can I
say.
clarify? So the idea of the act of Jesus' death is an essential component of the Christian faith. How does that or does that not relate to something like atonement for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it relates to atonement in the sense that, like, if we're talking about his death happening, which it happened, and there's sin and brokenness in the world, I think the way that we reconcile, like, again, human understanding and theology is us saying, like, there's a good God, there's a broken humanity, there's sin in the world, Jesus died, somehow that reconciles. Like, we're all doing atonement theology, even if it doesn't fit into one of the mechanistic structures. So like I don't really know exactly. I probably vacillate between a lot of the different atonement theologies, depending on like my time and place. Other than ransom, I'm not a big like Jesus was like held as like the ransom for or like he. So I don't know. Like I was thinking about this on. I can't remember if I said this in our meeting today or not, but like as I was driving, like one of the things that I was thinking about me as a pastor is like I have no interest in posturing like I have all of the answers to things. So I'll say that to be like, I really don't know, but I would say like Jesus' death atones for, does work towards something, which I would say is redeeming the brokenness of the world. Like, and I think we lead that into a brokenness and shame story that doesn't need to be there. But like the reality is, at least for me, not everyone has to agree with me. Like I believe the world is peppered with brokenness. And the work of Jesus is putting that back together. And the work that Jesus did on the cross goes about that. I don't always know if I have the best way to articulate that, but I supremely believe that reality to be true.
I like that. I like that answer. Sadie. Give it to us, Sadie.
Give it to us. Well, you didn't say what I thought you were going to say, so it
What
makes...
did you think he was going to say? I want to know.
I'm not
also
sure.
A fun segment. What do you think Danny would say to
What do you
this?
think Danny's... what's Danny's
Let's all answer
to this?
for Danny.
Yeah.
We have to do that on the podcast already.
We could call it Dan-splaining.
Yeah, we do. That's good. That's good.
Hashtag
His
it,
mind.
put it
His
on a
mind.
t-shirt.
Yeah, what did you think I was going to say?
That it still is kind of a personal sin issue that is involved with the reason why Jesus had to die, if those words even like make sense. You
I
know
don't exactly know what you're saying, but
well, I might just keep going with my spiel,
Go
and
ahead.
then you
Do
can
it,
tell me if you disagree.
This is the same place.
Before you go in this, I would say you and I agree on things more than you think oftentimes, but I think you and I articulate them
I'm sure we do.
different ways, but I see a lot more like overlap. But I also like in general in life try to look for the overlap in people's beliefs rather than
which
the
is
difference.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to look for the connective tissue in that.
Yeah, he said wing 9.
Wing 9.
Which is great. Sorry.
Oh, wing 9?
Yeah.
Is this an Enneagram thing?
Sorry, sometimes my brain goes into autopilot with the responses.
It's okay.
Thanks.
We'll have to do an episode on the Enneagram.
Yeah.
I don't super know like what to do with it. Just
Okay,
like, as a
boomer.
tool,
Well, you should
as a tool,
you should
like-
worship it and make it higher than
That's
what you
true.
think.
Get back to that evangelical space,
Yeah.
baby. Come
Okay,
on, we got it.
Sorry, go ahead, Sadie.
Anyways, so why did Jesus die, and it
Just-
pertains to
What do you think about Jesus' death
The essential nature of it.
as something essential to the Christian faith, or is it?
Yeah. So I think in my opinion, what Jesus' death isn't, is it wasn't my get out of hell free card. I think that I love the idea and the belief that Jesus's life, death, and resurrection should be the example of all of humanity, of Jesus being the what do they call it? The new and better Adam. The pinnacle of what all humans will go through, which is a betrayal and death of some sorts, but the purpose of that is that it's not the final say and it's not the end of the story. And so what it means for us, it's less about, and how that interacts with like sin, is that sin in my, I don't even really like the word sin, but by my definition, sin, it's not like my personal piety. It's what am I contributing to as an individual and as a society and a collective, contributing to like suffering. And that it's pretty broad, but it does make it universal. It does make sin kind of universal, that I contribute both personally, that I do wrong to others, and I also like buy clothes on Amazon, and I drive a vehicle, you know, like how I vote, and living in America and working a 9 to 5, like kind of being a part of the system contributes to sin, capital S, but I also like, I do the wrong things sometimes, and I say the wrong things to the suffering of someone else. And that's why I need redemption. And that's how I think that Jesus is the model and the inspiration. And I'll also say the power to redeeming that and resurrecting that.
Yeah. I dig that.
So it's like a little more woo-woo.
Yeah. Well, I would say like I've defined sin as, and Emily and I talked about this on the early days of the pod, and I don't think she liked my answer, agreed with me, but like I maybe don't, you could say if this isn't true, but like I classified sin as like what pulls us apart from God and other people. Like it pulls us apart from each other people. And that's kind of what I hear you saying. Like sin is like, and the term is like missing the mark, right? It's like missing the mark of holiness or goodness, but it's like ultimately pulling ourselves apart from one another and from God, which I hear what you're saying in that to some degree.
But where fundamentalists would say, they would be like, well, masturbating is pulling you apart from God. Saying, oh my God, is pulling you apart from God. And that I think is probably the key difference in probably some of the thought. And not between you and I, but just between like, just in general.
Disclaimer.
Disclaimer.
I heard you say the fundamentals part. It would be an interesting episode at some point, or like even like off camera. Like, I don't know, but like one of the things I find to be really interesting, and I want to hear your guys' responses on this question that we're already on, but like, what is sin in like a general term? Like, is it classifiable? Because that's one thing that like I would say as a progressive Christian I get knocked on. People say like, well, you're inclusive of LGBTQ people, so you don't believe in sin. I was like, I believe in sin. I don't believe being gay is a sin. I don't believe being trans is a sin, but I believe in sin. Yeah. And there is this like idea that like being a inclusive or progressive Christian or whatever moniker you want to use, like it means you don't believe in sin. I was like, I firmly believe in sin, but I would bet we might all have different ideas of what falls under the rubric of sin.
Yeah. So this is one of these things that like ever since like you and I had the conversation on our podcast that like I am actively deconstructing like today, and like I'm like sitting here like shaking my leg because like I'm having like an anxiety attack. Not really. But like it's I don't know like how I feel like I know what I was raised on, and like I know what my initial beliefs were, and like the way that Danny articulated his beliefs, I think like if I've talked about this on our podcast, like I'm very like I think of the three of us, I'm the newer one in the deconstruction like journey. Like I am freshly a Methodist coming from very traditionalist backgrounds in the Baptist world, but like I was deconstructing long before I made the transition. But like I think still just in general, like I think you know it's been a shorter process for me. So this is one of these like nuanced things that I haven't quite gotten to yet. I think your description is the closest of where I sit now. Like, you know, I've said this story a few times on our podcast. Like my favorite like knock.
This is your podcast now.
Thanks, Mom. Wow. Oh my gosh. Ooh, are we a little family? My favorite knock on my journey at my previous church was I got yelled at Christmas time, my last Christmas that I was there, during our Christmas presentation, and I gave like the little sermon at the end, and I said that Jesus was murdered, and I had like letters for me to be fired. Not really, but like people were like, why the hell would you say that? Like, you heathenist, like Jesus was not murdered, like he was predestined to die. And I was like, and I never like called anybody out on this, but I was like, I got that from a Max Lucado book, and like if I told all these like fundy Baptist people that Max Lucado wrote this, I think that they would like
lose their mind.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they would just like explode in front of me. But
So Max, since you're listening,
thanks,
Yeah.
Max.
Max.
Future guest on the podcast.
yeah,
But yeah, I think your definition is kind of where I lay. Like, I think that like it's an integral part of the story, and like I think that we had to get there, and I think that it's something that had to happen, and so like Easter is one of these weird things where like we celebrate it, but like it's weird to celebrate a murder. Like it's like you kind of like shake your head at that. Like I know we're celebrating the resurrection, but like you
no,
know.
I think that it's supposed to be uncomfortable too.
Yeah, and I think there's a cool part about that, right? Like faith is not supposed to be this like mushy gushy thing that we all love and we can just like sing kumbaya about. Like topics like deconstruction and like how your ideas shift. Like that is supposed to be like that's the fun part of like faith to me, and like having a faith community is like I don't like to agree with everybody. Like all four of us don't agree on everything too, and like, as we can tell already, like. And we can have civil conversations like this still. Danny's on TikTok right now, just so we know.
I was hunting down a quote that I wanted to share.
When Sadie was answering too, that's why I laughed at you. He opened up Facebook, I think, trying to find a quote. But when I peered over to his
like,
phone,
so bored.
it was a picture of Danny on the Wells page. I was like, is he this? Like, it was such great timing. But you were so deep in yours. I was like, I
Right.
can't.
I'm
I
like,
have to hold
I'm
it
like,
together.
I'm like tearing up.
Yes, yeah. Oh my god.
And Danny's like, dang, I
Danny-
thought this
Danny
post
like
was
my
gonna.
own picture
I
really
thought
quick.
that-
so good.
I thought this post was gonna do
so
better.
But yeah, I think that's kind of where I sit. Like, not a very deep and divine answer, but
Yeah.
like that's kind of where I'm at.
Says who?
today? Thanks.
I think
Says who?
Aw.
I think it is.
Slay.
I think that's actually, we do a lot of ourselves a disservice when we say stuff like that. So I would say give yourself props for doing the work of trying to
Thank you.
wrestle through it. I'd be interested to hear you haven't answered this yet, right?
Okay,
But
Danny.
Are you gonna have
so-
3 answers for this one?
I don't know.
So I was trying to pull up this thing. I can't find his name on here, but he said that Jesus died standing up to the empire, not to atone for your sins. Someone posted that. And I was like, yes and no, because I do think there is a function of Jesus' death. Like, I don't think it's just a political death.
Yeah, I think God was able to use what that was, into something for the story,
Yeah.
right? Like it was able to be used as a translation
For the
but-
bit.
Total commitment
For
to
the bit, yeah.
I think we do it.
Jesus is the ultimate Theo bro.
I think we do
Yeah.
the death of Jesus on the cross a disservice when we boil it down only to a political act. I think it like shrinks the scope. It's one of like my beefs because I just preached on social justice and the implications of that, and I didn't go. It was very surface level. I didn't go super deep on anything, but like there is this intersection between politics and faith.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we try to make faith only political and take like the spiritual out of it, and then sometimes we go the other way around. It's like it's only a personal exercise. And there's no real world / political implications, right?
So let me ask a follow up or a clarifier. So the dichotomy between making it all political and not at all spiritual. So what do we
I need to step out.
pay no attention to the man leaving the room.
He'll be back.
We're juggling
Housekeeping.
juggling several different duties at the moment.
There's a real church happening.
There's a
in
real
this
church happening
building.
outside of this office and stuff.
that you guys are actually running.
No, we are. Yeah, we're trying to run. But
Yeah,
so
I didn't
what-
hear your question to start because he was standing up, so start it over.
No, it's
for me a
okay.
second.
So you mentioned making Christianity all political and stripping it of the spiritual. So what do you define as the spiritual? Let's define that.
Well, I think that
term.
we have real post-life implications to this, and like
Okay.
we are spiritual beings. I think life after death exists. I think when I say we only make it political, we make it like very. This is not a great or articulate answer necessarily, but I think when we over politicize it, we make it the most selfish version. Like, unless those politics have something to do with other people, but
Yeah.
even in that, sometimes I think like when it's like Jesus was a Democrat, he wasn't. Jesus was a Republican. No, he wasn't. Right? Like, I think it just becomes overly selfish. And so when I say spiritual, I just think the connection between all of us, like that's very spiritual. Like,
Yeah.
I think we have post mortem like realities that
Yeah.
happen. And I think I would agree with Rob Bell. Everything is spiritual.
Okay. I do love Rob Bell. I do love the everything is spiritual bit. Not bit in like not in like a pejorative sense, but like I like.
It's my favorite bit.
Yeah, so I guess I have a couple ideas. Like post-mortem life,
Yeah, you don't need it.
I don't need it. I feel the same way about it that I feel about like aliens. Like
Yeah.
I don't super know and I don't super care about it. But like when I think about the spiritual aspect of Christianity, to me, I think yes, like human connection, like relationship building, what's the ways in which we collaborate with one another to ease suffering, like those are all spiritual to me. Our ethical convictions on things, I mean, that's a spiritual issue to me. So I think it's less for me about an either or of this dichotomy as much as just like to me, I don't know. You can talk about like some scientific explanations of why we as people try to promote collaboration over violence toward one another or whatever, but I don't know that you can just boil it down to that, or you can just boil love down to like chemicals in the brain. Like there's a greater reality there that's other. Right, we used the word other a little bit ago, of like and we talk about the letters of John talk about like God is love. So when we talk about love, we can't just talk about like the feelings of sentimentality happening in our brains, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, when I think about like the spiritual aspect of this and how it plays a part, it's an integral piece to the political, because without the spiritual aspect of like human connection, coalition building, ethical and moral imperatives and convictions, we wouldn't have anything to say to the political aspect of Christianity. So those things have to work together for me. And yeah, I mean, like there are some of the spiritual questions with Christianity, some of the because like I think I separate like spiritual from metaphysical. Like metaphysical questions like afterlife, whatever, I can take it or leave it. I'm happy to like talk about it. It's not an essential component of my particular piety. I don't knock other people who do have that essential component to their piety, insofar as it doesn't stop them from living in the world in a way that is becoming of the person of Jesus.
What I'll say, and yes, I also don't mind if people have like post-mortem thoughts, but for me personally, because it was such a source of anxiety, like releasing that was super freeing, and I'm much happier, and I think that I am experiencing a much more eternal life, like a life that is more life-giving, that the life that begets life, because of like releasing that.
Yeah, well, and like the same belief, I mean, the same, or however you want to think about this, like the belief in an afterlife that like we're in this world as just like a passing phase, and like we have to get like, it's the belief that traumatized kids with this question is the same belief that like white people use to enslave Africans, and to keep them enslaved, to say like, don't worry about this, you don't need freedom in this life, you're gonna go to the next place and it'll be great. And so like there's aspects of afterlife, there's aspects of like traditional bodily conceptions of resurrection, all those things that I find to actually be quite oppressive to people. And like I said, if people hold those convictions, that's fine, I think, insofar as it doesn't impede their ability to work for liberation in the world of people who are physically oppressed, emotionally oppressed, spiritually oppressed. And so that's one of those things that's like, it's got to be contextual to somebody's particular piety, or else it's just, once it's amorphous, it's just meaningless, right? To me.
Yeah, Sadie on Sunday, like you're talking a little bit about like in a couple weeks when you preach on environmentalism and the idea of like not evacuating like to this afterlife, which
or to Mars.
Yeah, or to Mars. But I think there is like there is a stewardship idea to like this life, and like sometimes like when we have too much of the afterlife, like it goes to this. But one thing, like, and we talked a little about this again today, like what I really dug about your worship set on Sunday is you riffed a little bit on the idea of like breath and spirit, and this idea of like the Holy Spirit being breath, and like God being like the word Yahweh like being breath, right? Like it's a breathy word, and the Holy Spirit is like oftentimes seen as breath, and like that's one of the things too. It's like when I think around the real life implications, which is what I would say, like not just political, but the real life implications of our faith. Like I think if it's not giving more people breath and life, if it's taking breath and taking life, then it's doing the wrong thing. Like if it's giving breath and giving life, like that is what faith in Jesus should be doing. And even as like he exhales his last breath, right? Like that goes to other people, right? Like, and he is resurrected. Like there's his breath is brought back. Like I don't. It's just like so much around. Like as you were saying that on Sunday, like I told you, like my mind was going like 1,000,000 miles an hour. I was like, do I have another sermon in here? And I was like, well, we're not going to go for another hour.
Probably.
But I was like, man, like that was a good word to me in the sense that like the Spirit of God that fills us, which is like our breath, what we know to be so like integral to who we are, is something we can share with other people, like giving other people life.
Yeah.
Right?
And
That'll preach.
Sorry. I will say too that like I have these ideas for my own personal piety about how they work, and that's not to say that, you know, people who are in varying circumstances, or like people who have a terminal illness and they're dying in front of their family and their kids, might find great comfort in the idea of an afterlife. And like, far be it from me to like poo-poo that and be like, well, you're not using this to work toward the blah, blah. You know, to an extent, I'm like a theological pragmatist. Like, this is giving someone peace and comfort in this moment in their life because of whatever. And like, I'm okay with that. Like, that does not bother me. Like, I'm not interested necessarily in, you know, and to an extent, like the way that all theology is contextual to an extent, like all theology is pragmatic to an extent, to a particular context. And so I will say that too, in that, you know, there is the hope-giving aspect of a different post-mortem life after this one. It is not something that I'm just fundamentally opposed to, just on principle. I don't know, I just thought about that as we were talking.
Mm-hmm. I'm down. I'm down if there is.
Yeah.
I'm down.
I'll be
if
there.
There is.
Yeah.
I'll see you in hell, bro.
Save me a seat.
Me and
since I've
Save me a
been
seat in
on
hell.
since I've been on staff here,
Yeah.
JT and I find a lot of comfort in each other and say, I can't wait to get to hell and just continue to beat the shit out of Ronald Reagan with you together for eternity.
What just happened?
Wow. What a fun pastime.
Hell,
It sounds awesome.
Ronald Reagan, J. Edgar Hoover,
Yeah.
Derek Chauvin. We're just gonna pass them back and forth, for eternity,
It sounds great.
and just
That's
beat
my
the
heaven.
shit out of them.
Yeah, that's my heaven.
J. Edgar Hoover building was the best one to take classes at George Fox University.
I
Says a lot.
walked past the Ronald Reagan building in D.C. and took a picture flipping it off.
You're welcome. I told you to
showed
do it,
him.
so.
You did. You
Yeah,
did tell me
you're
to do
welcome.
that. It was somewhat of a cathartic moment. All my problems can be traced back to Reagan. I could guarantee.
1000%.
I think me too, actually.
Yeah.
Hashtag
all
me
of
too.
us probably. Hashtag me too.
Yeah, hashtag me too.
I'm glad
What,
you find the solidarity.
Can I throw another one out there? Does somebody else have a pressing, like a burning theology question or a contentious one?
Mine was really like a theology question. This is not the original question I came prepared with. I'm just letting you know this.
That's why you left the room to go Google it.
I had to like prepare myself. Yeah. So like, I mean, like, so our deconstruction journey is a journey, obviously. But like, what was like the one, like, I give up moment? Like, because like I feel like we all like were like steadily inclining or declining, however you want to view it. But like we were going up the incline of like, this is where I'm going with my life now. And then there was just like the hammer dropped. You're like, I want to like punch a wall. I'm so angry. And like, this is like, I'm fully going on this journey now. Like, what was the moment for you guys?
That was like, I can't be evangelical anymore.
Sure, yeah, however you want to interpret that, but like for me, like I was
the trigger for your deconstruction.
Yeah, like I had been doing it myself for like, you know, let's say a year or two at this point, and then I'll tell mine later. But like there was this one thing, and that's when I was like, I fully am embracing this lifestyle now.
Yeah, I feel like there are kind of two instances that can kind of happen. Like one is like when you start doing it mentally, and then the second decision is like when do you finally, when have you deconstructed so large that you can no longer fit into the space that you once were, whether that be like a literal church or church staff or position, or it can just be like metaphorical, like how you viewed yourself. But the mental one was really in college, whenever I just learned that people can have it might sound silly, but I just didn't know that people could interpret the same Bible differently.
Yeah.
Because there's kind of a step program in deconstruction almost. It's like before you, because a lot of the times in fundamentalism, you're raised in such a vacuum that you can't even imagine any other possibility on any topic. And so once I learned just that concept that other people can disagree on kind of specific things about theology, Bible, it was kind of like, whoa, like time to learn or just be open to other fields of thought. So I would say being open to it happened beginning of college, I think, and then I just kind of it was a process for sure. And then whenever I was like, I cannot exist in this role that I was finally at the end of the residency that I was doing while I was getting my master's. Is just, I mean, I was forced out because they gave me the option. They're like, you can stay and be a volunteer, but you won't be able to lead worship. Like you can stay, you can play instruments forever, as long as I am affirming of the gay community. Yeah. So it was finally whenever I decided that I like wasn't willing to put up with that. And so that'd be like, I guess right as I moved down here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So November 2021.
Nice. Daniel or Joel?
Yeah, I don't know. So first, you're not silly for like being like, I didn't know this, because like a lot of people are like very much told they're not allowed to question the Bible. I remember my twin brother and I went to college and we took a class in the Psalms. Howard Macy was the professor.
You have a twin brother?
Yep.
I do have a twin. Curly hair, blonde, blue eyes.
So we got, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
He took a class in the Psalms. Professor Howard Macy said, and the Bible may not all be literal, and his mind exploded. And he spent the next decade and a half deconstructing. And he went to college to be a pastor, and like that was like his first class. And it was like,
That's rough.
I can't do this anymore. So, but like when you're told that, and then you hear it for the first time from a professor, and you're like, this person's reputable. And then you do a little research on your own, and you're like, oh man, this is wild. And your whole framework was built on literalism and nothing else. Like, that's really hard. So, not silly for that. I think a lot of our listeners and a lot of people have had similar sorts of beliefs. For me, I don't know that I never needed the Bible to be literal. And so, like, my deconstruction, and I've said this to a lot of people, like, wasn't as much around the Bible. It was around, like, people's practice of religion and Christianity. So, like, I've deconstructed my ecclesiology or understanding of the church, or like my thoughts on how people should practice religion maybe. So like my first thing deconstruction wise was like, I remember working at a church and the denomination kicked out a church for having like gay and lesbian people on their hospitality team. I was like, the church can do better. And I was like, maybe I'll never work at a church again because this sucks. And I ended up not. And then the second thing, when I became a progressive, inclusive, specifically LGBTQ plus inclusive pastor, there was a point really in the last like 3 years where I realized like inclusion is far bigger than any one group. And we often are like, inclusion is this one monolithic thing. So I am currently deeply enamored and in the throes of deconstructing what actual inclusion means. as far as like including LGBTQ plus people, including people I disagree with, including people that are politically problematic, include like if I'm a universalist, say that I am, or you're a universalist, I would say most universalists aren't, because they don't want to spend eternity with apparently Ronald Reagan. I just found out, right? Like what do we do with that? And I like current or with
Please do.
so here's I think we have people we don't want there, and I'm starting to reconcile that. Like
Dang it, Danny.
But like what? Okay, included. Do I have to hang out with them, or are we talking about included?
I think if eternity is as sweet and good
eternally-
as it's promised, why would I not want to hang out with everyone?
Man, I hate when Danny makes.
But I don't know if
Good
like my
points.
consciousness is gonna live. If my Sadie Merbarger consciousness is gonna live past my death, so I don't.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. I guess what I'm currently deconstructing is like I think that if I believe God is so universally and radically graceful to all, I have to like practice that better. So I'm currently deconstructing my practice of extending the grace I think Jesus extends to all of us. That's what I'm currently
Okay.
deconstructing.
Interesting.
Kyle and I have this ongoing joke about going to hell and beating up Ronald Reagan. I will say that I just got done saying I don't care about a conscious afterlife, which is true. I don't care one way or another, but I will say if there is a conscious afterlife and say it does resemble something akin to our notions of heaven and hell or whatever that looks like, then this is what Bart said. I actually find Bart really compelling on this.
Talk more about Bart. Keep going.
Okay. I do find Bart compelling on this because he says he like nods toward universalism and he says, we don't know, obviously. We don't know if that's true or not, but we should pray that it's true. We should pray that Hitler makes it in, because that's really what grace is.
Mm-hmm.
And so thinking about like this idea, like, and that can be hard to do like in practice, right? Like praying that somebody, whether in this life or the next life, is like, reformed and is brought into perfect alignment with the image of God, and hard to do in practice if we think about it in that way. But I will say that's probably the only version of a conscious afterlife I'm willing to entertain, is where everybody does make it in, and where time and history is redeemed in such a way that these atrocities never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if it's not that, I don't want it, and I don't, like I said, I don't know what it is or isn't, but there is something to be said about like thinking about this idea of like the eternality of occlusion, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah.
And what it could and couldn't mean for those pieces, and acknowledging the difficulty in trying to include the people
Yeah.
that have caused suffering and pain and all those things.
I've just been kicking around like our church's mantra, which is your seat at the table can't cost someone else theirs, right? Like that's a mantra we say a lot. And what is a mantra other than something that I just say a lot and then tell the church they have to also believe? But but I think most of our congregation is really rallied around that idea. But I started to ask myself, like, do I really, like, what if X, Y, or Z person, like, what if someone that really hurt me showed up? Like, what if someone that
Ooh, interesting.
committed like a really big crime showed up,
Yeah.
like, and that was seen really deplorable by other people? Like, what if someone that like really hurt someone else shows up? Like, and then there's like certain levels of that, like, well, what does it mean for your seat to not to cost someone else? And maybe that means different things, but I don't know. I've been wrestling with the implications of my practical theology and like what that means in everyday life. And I don't know, it's interesting to me. Like, I think that's why I do this whole Jesus thing. I think it has real world implications. It's not just a
Yeah.
later on thing. But I also believe fully that it extends into the afterlife, and so I want to live as if that reality is going to be true, but try my best to embrace and create it now.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to do in that.
Yeah.
It's funny because like you said like 3 different things that all kind of point together to what my like deconstruction journey is like. And it's funny because like now as I was kind of sitting here like listening to you guys, like I think my deconstruction started earlier than I give myself credit for. Because I like to think that, you know, I started deconstructing like when I was in college and like I started to learn more about the Bible and like you know, was doing all that studying and I was like, I'm so smart, but which is none of that is true. But no, like and you said you mentioned like, you know, like gay and lesbian couples like not being like included in church, and you know that reminded me of when I was in high school and we had a girl that had been a part of our church for like a long time. Like my sister and her were like friends growing up through youth group, and like family was like a stalwart in the church. Like they were great people. And then she came out as lesbian and got married, and then they had a child and wanted to dedicate him in the church. And our church wrote legislation at that moment to basically say like, no, you can't, like, because it, you know, the Baptist Church had like their beliefs on what they believed about LGBTQ people, but it was never like in writing, so they very quickly like wrote it down and then basically said you can't do it. And I was like, and like I was like a freshman or sophomore in high school, and I was like, that's wrong.
That
like,
doesn't sound right.
I was like,
You
but
have to really hate
I was like, but we
gay people to.
I know, but that was the thing too. Is then they, you know, then they're like, oh, but we still love you, and like we want you to be a part of the church, and like, you know, and I was like, but you don't love her, like
you made up a new rule in spite of them.
Yeah, and they were like, well, we've always believed this, and I'm like, okay, maybe, but like, what? Like, come on.
Yeah.
So that I guess that was really the first moment that like maybe I was a little baby deconstructor and I didn't give myself credit for it, but. Oh man, your guys' answers were so much deeper than mine, and I should have gone first when I was like an idiot. But like mine, like you were talking about like your beliefs. Stop shaking your head.
I'm shaking my head because you're doing it right now. You're giving yourself less credit than you need right now.
You guys are gonna learn more about this about me on the podcast. But yeah, it was the first time I listened to the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill with your best friend Marky D.
There he is.
Buddy.
You were talking about
Name
like
drop.
you know, people believing things about the Bible, and then you're like, but that's not it. And then like I listened to that podcast, everybody was like, you have to listen, and I like pushed it up for forever, and I was like, oh shit, like this is holy crap, like what are we doing? And so that was really my first moment, and I was like, this is what Mark is preaching. And like, and then I'm thinking like, and putting that back to the people that I know in my spaces that like still look up to Marky D. There it is. And
Sorry, guys.
the camera's off, so it's fine. And then I was like, oh, but you still like him? And then like we would talk about it like in our church settings too, and they'd be like, well, he didn't really mean that. And that was like my heart out, and I was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. Like this is so disgusting. Because then people would look at me and they'd be like, well, you're wrong for thinking that he's wrong. And I was like, see, that can't be it, right? Like you can't.
There's got to be something better.
You can't still listen to that, because like is the people that defended him listened to the podcast. Like it was a big topic of conversation in our church, and they were like, "Well, it's not exactly what it seems to be." And I'm like, oh, come on, like what is? Yeah. So that's my story. That's what I was thinking this conversation was going to be.
Well, as someone that lived on that side of the country and had many friends that went to Mars Hill, it's exactly what the podcast said it was.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Oh man. So yeah.
Yeah.
That was mine.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I would also echo what JT said. I think like be more charitable with yourself. I think,
you will. I'm not. You'll learn. I'm too self-deprecating. That's why like I learned that in therapy, and then I was like, oh yeah, and then it hasn't really stuck yet. So it's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Sades, you got a final question for us? I think we've all asked one, right?
I'll ask a question. I didn't come with one prepared, but I've been marinating on one, so I got it.
Yeah.
Let it out.
All right. So, other religions, should we be trying to convert them to believe in Jesus?
Yeah. Hey, thank you for listening to the Deconstruction.
Yeah, it's great to see you.
Number 2, embrace the journey. Play the music.
Well, I'll answer first, and I think no, but I mean, I'll happily like answer a follow-up question, but I want to hear you guys too. My short answer is no.
I really enjoyed the last episode because I'm catching up on yours. Last episode you guys did Oh no, I think it was your guys's, because you were like, if one of you said, like if my kid picks up the Quran, like maybe it was you, like if my kid picks up the Quran, like I'm gonna like let them explore that, and I'm gonna say, this is what we believe, this is what is in this book. I mean, like, we're not gonna like shame them for picking that up. And I was thinking about that as you said that, like, as a new dad, I was like, okay, so as I raise my son, and to be a loving and charitable person in this world, like, what if he does have Muslim friends, and what if he does have Jewish friends, and like they start to have these conversations about religion, even in like a young age, like your kids are, like in 2nd, 3rd grade, however old your kids are. Like, that's got to be a really hard conversation to have as a dad. And I was like having anxiety as I was driving my car, and I was like, oh my gosh, but like my kid's 1 month old, so I shouldn't need that right now. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that.
Welcome to parenthood. It's just like long car ride of anxiety.
Yay.
Much to look forward to.
But like, I was looking at that. I was like, I liked your answer, and I was like, oh, that's like, we shouldn't be so scared of those moments. Like,
right. But what if they stick with it? It's not like.
I think that's what you kind of alluded to. You were like, okay, so this is what we believe, and like we are creating this open space, like, for you to do that. And like, we talk about that with one of our middle schoolers that's here at Concord right now. Like, she had a moment when she was growing up. This was before I was on staff here, but like, was like, I'm an atheist, and and I don't believe in Jesus. And and her dad was like, great, like, you're gonna come to church with us still, but like, you are allowed to believe what you believe, and we're gonna have these conversations. And they're like, and basically, like, they said, you're only going to church because you're like 10 and you can't stay at home.
Yeah.
So, like, that's like, for legal reasons you have to come.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I think I get that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I think in terms of like kids, like, I don't really know how else to answer that question besides I like how you guys have done that, you and the other person that I have mentioned. I was definitely raised in settings where it's like, we have to convert the world, and even then, like, yeah, I think I definitely used to have that like on fire passion of like, yeah, like, we're gonna get everyone, and we're gonna win the war, because that's what it was. I don't think that way anymore. Like, you are here to believe what you believe, and I don't know how deeper to get into that. Like, I don't see anything wrong with that. Like, I believe what I believe. Like, I hope I'm right in what I believe, because that's what I believe. But like, I'm sure they're having these conversations too, in their countries, or in different houses across the street from us, and they're like, I hope what I believe is right too. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Somebody else take this. I could ramble forever.
Yeah, I am less interested in converting other people from other religions. I am interested in sharing with non-religious people the abundant life found in Jesus. So like, I really am interested in that. And that's another way of saying converting non-religious people to become Christian. So like, I just package that in a nicer way. So, but I am interested.
You used to work in marketing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I am interested in that. Like, I think there's abundant life found in Jesus. And so if someone doesn't have a belief faith structure, like, I'm very interested in sharing that with them, especially if they are searching for like with an unnamed emptiness in their life. Like, they like are like, man, I just feel incomplete. Like, what? I have found abundant life and meaning in Jesus. And I think like you might be able to find that too. I would say for people of other religions, like, I want to convert any people to like loving understanding. Like, I think there are fundamentalist Christians, there's fundamentalist conservatives, there's fundamentalist progressives, there's fundamentalist Muslims, there's fundamentalist Hindus, probably. I mean, there's fundamentalists everything. Like, I think fundamentalism of all kinds is problematic. And I think there's not a lot of love found in fundamentalism. And so like, converting people to a faith rooted in love is really interesting to me. Like, there are people at the well that come somewhat frequently and infrequently that are atheists, that are Hindu maybe, that are across different faith beliefs, and like, all of them have found meaning at the well and found meaning in the teachings and been challenged by Jesus, which, like, I don't think challenged by me, challenged by the teachings of Jesus that like we're presenting, the songs we're singing, even if like they're like theologically I don't line up with all these things. And I have found, by creating a safe space of curiosity and inclusion, like, people are moving along that journey. So the answer I would say is like, I used to have to like sign papers like talking about people I converted and like tell those narrative stories. And I'm like, I didn't like it.
It's giving me the ick.
It's giving me the ick.
You guys are
and I was
so
always
good.
like, my first thought was like, who the hell is really doing this? Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, my initial thought was, and maybe it's because I'm just a bad evangelist, but I was like, I think everyone's lying about this. Like, I don't think anyone's converting anybody.
Yeah.
But in the Methodist Church, I have to fill out paperwork, and it's like, share stories of transformation. I have lots of those to share, like people's lives being transformed by the transformative power of Jesus. Like, I think that's really cool, and I want to share those stories of people that have been at our congregation, that have come into our congregation. Like, I think that's one of the metric areas the Methodist Church in Missouri is crushing right now. Is like, we're looking for life transformation, not like more butts and seats.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Other religions, whatever. Like, do what makes you happy. I not super duper interested. And there's a couple things I think, like, religion as a historical and contextual construct is something that is under just as much judgment and scrutiny by the divine as our political parties, as anything else. Like, this Tower of Babel that we've built in, like, as the Christian religion is, like, God is not a Christian. God transcends religion. And so, and the idea that God can only speak through this expression or understanding of the divine as I interpret it, I feel is quite hubristic. So I think God can be and is at work in other religions. I think people can, and I'm not a huge fan of, like, the different paths up the same mountain explanation of other religion. Like that, like, that's fine if, like, that's helpful for you, but every religion doesn't reach the same peak. Like, for Christianity, it's salvation. For Buddhism, it's nirvana. Like, these are all different realities that we're talking about. We're not all talking about the same thing. I think we can, like, we can compare qualities of those things, and talk about how they may be similar or different from one another. But I think the idea that whatever God is, this force or movement or being in the universe that is other, that is working to connect people in love and justice and mercy with one another, is active everywhere. And so, like, coming back to the initial question, it's like, why would I give a shit about converting other people to Christianity if they're already doing that in a way that makes sense to them? And, like, acknowledging that I'm a Christian by accident of the fact that I was, like, born in Missouri to parents who were, like, peripherally connected to a church, and so, like, that was just my context and language I received for how to talk about this. If I was born in, like, Southeast Asia, it might be really different or whatever. And so, that's kind of how I'm coming at this.
It all comes back to predestination.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
We were predestined to end,
To have
here.
I wanted to say elaborate a little bit on my answer to the question, other than just no. I'm not trying to convert people of other faiths to my faith, because I think that even just putting a name to God, even describing God through language, is limiting, because, like, because humans invented language, like, in the same way that there's not a perfect way to translate the Bible from the original languages to English, there's also, it's even more than that, because we're trying to describe God, who I believe that probably it's tough to describe. And so I think that I can experience what I would call the Holy Spirit in, like, so I lived in Thailand in the summer of 2018, and I was at temples feeling the same way at that young Hillsong United concert. It's like, there's a sense of connectedness that just doesn't end for me at Christianity.
Yeah.
And when I have conversations with people of other faiths, like I see God in them also. Whatever word I want to say, the spirit that is in me, the light that's in me recognizes the light that's in them. I don't know. I'm not willing to, to tell someone that they're wrong when it comes to how they choose to describe their connection to the divine. And I prefer, and I try to put myself in scenarios where I will expand that definition.
Well, listening to you, it makes me think of, I had this like epiphany a few years ago. I was working on the story of Hagar and Ishmael in Genesis, and Hagar is out in the wilderness and with Ishmael, and the messenger of the Lord comes to her, or however this is worded, and comes to her aid, and she says, "You are Elroy. You are the God," which translates to the God who sees, right? Like the God who sees me. You're the God who sees me. But Elroy, as constructed, is like a title or a name, right? Not the same title or name as appears a few books later in Exodus with the tetragrammaton of I am that I am, or however you want to translate this. And so to me, looking at that is like this biblical model of Hagar identifying God as a certain name in a certain context, and then Moses identifying God with a certain name in a certain context with different names, right? So why is that any different than what we're doing with differing religions today, or what people are doing with different religions? Whether or not that's like a valid take on those texts. That's how it was helpful for me in that moment to think about that.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you believe firmly in different paths up the same mountain.
That's not what I'm saying.
I will say that probably will be the title of this episode.
Different paths of the same mountain.
Yeah.
Even though only one of us preferred mountain over beach.
Ooh.
Dude, I hate
Life's a beach.
I hate beaches. The sand.
Life is a
hot,
beach.
And it's gross.
I like a beach. I just aesthetically prefer mountains.
I guess I would enjoy beaches if we're going off the rails. I would enjoy beaches if
this is just bonus. You didn't pay for this.
Yeah.
Or anything else.
If I was like rich and I had one of those outdoor showers that I could like rinse all the sand off before going inside, then I would like beaches more, I think.
I mean, everybody has a hose.
Yeah, well maybe
not
you
everybody.
Do.
I don't
make that $1 million well money.
Yeah.
My landlord has a hose.
Yeah.
And I water his plants sometimes.
Let's talk about landlords on the next episode.
Yeah.
Well,
God, the ultimate landlord.
So here's the ultimate landlord. Another great episode title. Well, Kyle, so video stopped about a third into the episode because the memory card was full. So all of the video we shot beforehand, that's why that was the issue. So we won't do that again.
Oh no!
But thank you guys for sticking with us audio wise for this. Kyle,
and I'm sorry about the last episode. That was me.
That
was
we
my
did
fault.
some audio issues, but we're back. Kyle did not just like decide to stop talking. He did get raptured.
He's
so
gone.
as it turns
His
out,
clothes are here, but he's gone.
As it turns out, the Baptists were right.
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure where I went. I imagine there is stuff happening in your church, so I imagine he went to go do
There
work.
is a summer camp and summer camp staff and stuff which is all his job.
Yeah.
And so it's all happening outside of here. And
so he went to go do that.
He's going to put out fires, I think. Yeah.
But this was fun. I hope that those listening enjoyed this. Like, I thought it was fun just to like riff with you guys for a little bit, and like the question format, like I thought was actually kind of fun, like getting a chance just to like riff on some of these topics. And I would say for anyone like listening, there's a couple ways that you can like let us know things you would find interesting. I think we'll always try to incorporate that kind of stuff. Like, so if you're on Spotify, you'll see a chance for a poll. We'll make sure that's on there. Like, what questions you want to hear us talk about. If you see us on YouTube, definitely drop into the comments. Like, it's an easy place to see it. If you haven't already, smash that like and subscribe.
There you go.
On TikTok,
Yeah.
we will get back. Obviously not with this episode,
Right.
Unless there were really killer TikToks in the first third of the episode.
There might be,
Um,
I mean,
But eventually we'll have TikTok rolling again, Instagram, all that. So reach out to us. Like, you can email us at the deconstructionzonepod@gmail.com. That's an easy place to drop any questions. You can DM us on all of those platforms, Instagram, Facebook,
or personally.
TikTok personally. Like, those are all great.
I'll make sure to bring up your plea if you Venmo me.
Yeah. I'll say you have like followers on TikTok, and you're just like this
I do.
private profile,
Yeah.
and you have almost 10,000 followers on TikTok.
I do. I do actually. I did make it private.
He's blushing now.
I did. I mean, since you brought it up,
Well,
tucking his hair behind his
accepted
ear.
my thing. I was like, oh, I didn't know I
didn't know I
Yeah,
had
me
follower
too.
requests. I got like an email that was like, you have to answer these follower requests, and so I did.
There are
But
so many.
I did have a few videos that like went semi-viral in the corners of TikTok that I'm a part of, but I did. I'm got very concerned about like I've had social media, like professional social media drama happen in my like professional life, and so I like closed all of my social media down to where I can, because like I don't want like some of my church folks or like I don't friend or any of my like church folks or our youth or whatever on my personal platforms, and so I wanted like a barrier so I could vet people who was trying to watch my content. But I do.
I'm glad we made it past.
You made it. It was a tough decision. I had to.
Yeah.
I had to weigh the pros and cons.
Yeah,
but
you were offended when you met my wife for the first time I introduced you, like you hadn't already met her. I was offended when I was like, this guy, I wasn't already accepted to follow this guy months ago when I requested.
Sorry. Well,
Mine's more recent, so I'm not as mad.
Yeah. So, well, you and me, we see each other every single day, almost at CrossFit. But yeah, I never met Annie. Yeah, I was starting to think she wasn't real, honestly.
Makes sense.
I heard a lot about her, but never met her.
She's very sweet. She is upset that we went to 8:30 tonight.
I
Recording this
also
podcast.
I got an angry message from my partner as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fine.
I probably have a Snapchat from a situationship. So.
Well, with that Snapchat from a situationship, will you send us out? You got anything to send us out with?
I think that pretty much did it. So I think, including myself, all of us, let's
Embrace the journey. That was really good.
That was good.
Thanks.